Okay, so today we commence on the part of the three parts of direct officer, as we usually do for three parts for each of the elements that we have. And so now we come on into the direct officer. So as you look into the direct officer, generally it is an auspicious sign, especially when it is. Okay, so as we begin on the second part of your direct officer, the direct officer generally, without too deep into the analysis, we would presume, or we would take at first instant that the direct officer is an auspicious element. So direct officer to the female represents the husband. Alright, sorry, I can still, okay. Right, so here we have direct officer. So the three precious, according to the ancient text, would be direct wealth, direct officer, and direct resource. Therefore, in all simplicity, there is always a presence. There is always a presence for the three, direct officer, direct wealth, direct resource. So as we look into direct officer, we now see what would be the function of a direct officer. The first function of a direct officer, of course, is to restrain the self and to control the self. And because it is of opposite gender or opposite element, therefore it's harmonious. So you have a yin for yang or yang for yin. And of course, it is also part of the combination. It's also part of the 6 combinations or the 10 combinations in the elements. Therefore, here the control is harmonious. So therefore, one is the part that welcomes, so the part that the day master would welcome such control. So when we see the day master meeting direct officer, it would then be meeting boss, meeting promotions, meeting status and rank. And for the male, it represents children. And for the female, it represents husband. And so direct officer is a reading for husband, a reading for boss, a reading for children, authority of proper authority. Therefore, there's a first function of the officer to restrain and to control the self. And when direct officer is unfavorable, when it is weak, it may represent disease and illnesses, or the type of illnesses that controls and restrains the day master. And therefore, that will be also to look into the control when it becomes negative. And so when it is unfavorable, then meeting direct officer is meeting illnesses or related to them. Now, the direct officer produces resource. And therefore, the direct officer produces resource, indicating that status and reputation increases and enhance the revenue of the day master. Okay, great, Fernando? Fantastic. And therefore, resource represents revenue. Resource represents servants, a life of luxury, a life of servants serving you, a comfortable life, health, and therefore that would be also within the function of how the officer produces resource. And as a weakening, the officer weakens. So it weakens. So officer weakens wealth. And of course, in a weakening a relationship, it is not usually favorable if wealth is your useful god. But of course, in charts where wealth is excessive, wealth is too dominant, very strong. Therefore, the officer now comes in to regulate and to weaken the wealth. Right. So therefore, these are the 3 key functions of a direct officer. And so now, we also would then appreciate to look into the chart of a natal and then find out where the direct officer is. And as usual, we will see whether it is protruded into the stem as a fasa, or protruded here into the month, which is primarily the key career point, the key focal point for the career, or not just career, but anything that dominates and occupy the person's time, or whether it is the structure, and of course, whether it will be hidden deeply within the branches. And then if it is deeply hidden, we want to see whether it's hidden under a graveyard, under a grove star, or under a peach blossom. And so for direct officer, growth would be always favorable. So there are a few things that would be great to be hidden under a growth star, and officer is one of them. Besides officer, besides direct officer, which other elements would also be good if it is hidden under a growth star? Actually, many elements are good to be hidden under a growth star. Except for 7K, Except for 7K, Except for things that harms or things that are harmful to the day master. Usually eating God. Eating God is good, and direct officer is also good for you to be hidden under a growth element. Okay, so now we're going to explore the scenario of looking into what happens when the direct officer meets an oncoming element. Now, if we look into the chart here, very simply, which would be the which of these direct officer would not want to meet? Which one that it would not want to meet? And I believe we have covered that in the two elements ago. That would be the hurting officer. The hurting officer will be the harmonious element to the self day master. So therefore, it comes to a same direct clash to the officer, and therefore this would be, as mentioned in the earlier part when we discussed hurting officer. There's a saying that says when officer meets officer, or when direct officer meets hurting officer. Therefore, that would represent the inauspicious element, a clash that will denote calamity, which will be one that you can say inviting a lot of legal risk when that comes in as well. All right, so now we explore one by one what are the elements. We see a few of them, not all 10, but just a few. So in the first part, we have your direct officer meeting rock wealth. And so rock wealth results in a clash. Rock wealth results in a same element clash. So in a same element clash, that would be first part inauspicious. So therefore, the clash, a direct clash to your rock wealth. And so direct officer and rock wealth would be negative. Would be negative. And so here, when we look into direct officer versus rock wealth, what could be the issue? Now, rock wealth represents partner, and direct officer represents law. And so when the law clashes with your partner, what reading can we have? What reading can we have? Yeah, if it is coming to the point, so we may see that this may represent legal issues, we may represent misunderstanding, conflict between the business partners, and related to the legal issues. If it comes to a lady, then direct officer represents husband, and the husband clashes with siblings. Therefore, this may represent a clash between the siblings and also against your husband. Therefore, that would be the relationship clash that we can also see. So therefore, as we read, when we read the chart, if we do have rock wealth in the natal chart, or we do have your husband in the natal chart, then this is a case where husband meeting rock wealth, or direct officer meeting rock wealth. That's how we can actually also gauge as well. Okay, then we have the next, which is even more calamitous, which is direct officer meeting hurting officer. And that would be the worst of the lot. The worst of the lot comes to mind, where again we have your legal issues, misfortune, and basically disastrous. So this would be one of the nastiest clash you can have. So this is quite a nasty one, yeah. Direct officer meeting hurting officer. And so this officer part represents quite a lot of contentious issue. Your 7 killing is here, and your direct officer meeting hurting officer would also be there. And when it comes to females, direct officer meeting hurting officer may represent the notion of marital clash, marital clash. And so therefore that will be also the issue that will be unsettled, that we may find certain occasions to which for the female, it may be a scenario that her career may now go against the husband or the spouse or the partner. Therefore, this will be the direct officer meeting hurting officer. And now for the positive one. We now have your direct officer meeting direct resource. So direct officer meeting direct resource is a productive cycle. Direct officer produces resource. As direct officer produces resource, then this is a harmonic cycle. And a harmonic cycle, then we would refer to reputation, social standing. It increases the nobility, the level of nobility for the particular person. Last but not least, now we come into direct officer meeting indirect wealth. Direct officer meeting indirect wealth is what? A weakening. It's a weakening cycle. And so as a weakening cycle, direct officer meeting indirect wealth may be where direct officer is depleted. As it is depleted, then we can find it will be some kind of a chronic illness and financial loss. Now let's say, for example, Earth produces what? Earth produces metal. And therefore, in this context, for Earth producing metal, then the wealth will have to be Earth. When Earth produces metal, it produces a direct officer. So when direct officer meeting indirect wealth, it will then be metal weakening the Earth. And so metal has in a form of, imagine a spade or an axe breaking up and weakening the Earth, loosening it. Therefore, the metal disperse the Earth. Therefore, that would be some form of analogy that can come from it. Even if you look into water, and water produces wood, water produces. And so too much wood would then set and absorb water, and therefore the weakening effect is wood taking out the water. They can also be perceived to be a form of betrayal. Therefore, this will be a symbol of betrayal. This will be where you bite the hand that feeds you. As water produces wood and generate, now wood weakens water. Right, so each of these direct officer meeting indirect wealth will come into a sense. Now here, because we may be dealing with money, so indirect wealth, as we know, is quite something, that would represents indirect wealth, right? Represents an element that many people pursue or many people want, as in investment luck, making money, business opportunities, ventures, and therefore this indirect wealth meeting it. Now imagine into one part, direct officer meeting indirect wealth for a male can be the son, the son or the children, the children meeting what? The children meeting who? Imagine, just imagine in terms of relationship. Direct officer meeting indirect wealth. How do we put it into a phenomena that is social? Because direct officer to the male represents the children, and the children meeting the man's girlfriend for the first time. That would be calamity, isn't it? If a male has children that meets his side girlfriend for the first time, therefore that would be quite a weakening that comes into the point. All right, so this would be the case of how we can look into how direct officer meeting some of them, how the direct officer meeting some of these. And so what is the element for next year? So next year we have the wood dragon. And if Jia is the direct officer, if it is a direct officer, if Jia is the direct officer, then what day master are we looking at? What day master are we looking at? What will be the day master if Jia Wood is your direct officer? What would be your day master if Jia is your partner? Therefore here this would be G Earth, isn't it? This would be your G Earth. So the Jia Wood would control the G Earth. Therefore Jia Chen would be your partner. And then of course as your G Earth, then what would be the indirect wealth for a G Earth? The indirect wealth for a G Earth would be a rainwater. So rainwater. And therefore, as we find that the rainwater meeting the Jia Earth. So therefore, this would be the case of the indirect wealth meeting direct officer. So when indirect wealth meeting direct officer, therefore there's a weakening effect. It's a weakening effect. Now all these weakening and producing and clashing, they are not automatically one-sided. So here we have to see whether the rainwater represents a favorable element to the Chi Earth. Usually and more often it's not. It is not. And therefore if the Jia Earth comes in, it may actually be favorable. And therefore this will be not unfavorable but favorable. It will be good for Jia Earth, Jia Wood to actually controls the Chi Earth in the presence of the rainwater. So it may prevent the rain from cleaning up the Chi Earth. So this would be favorable then. So in this case, the direct officer meeting the indirect wealth will not be perceived to be immediately negative, but this will be positive. All right, Ken? So I hope if there's any questions, clear up, yeah? Okay, now move along. And so now as we come on to your pillar, so in the first part, we look into the direct officer meeting one of the elements. But if it's going to be a Jia Chen, what is Chen? What is the main element for the Chen dragon? That would be the Wu Earth, isn't it? And therefore here, Jia Chen, next year's Wood Dragon, to the Chi Earth Day Master. So for Chi Earth Day Master, next year would be a direct officer sitting on your rock wealth. And so direct officer sitting on rock wealth, what kind of pillar is that? What is the pillar for direct officer sitting on rock wealth? And so now let's take a look into where we deal with direct officer sitting on. So direct officer sitting on, and in first part, let's take a look into direct officer sitting on the friend. So direct officer sitting on a friend star, would be direct officer sitting on you. And therefore, as it comes along, that would be, in the first part, a very favorable outcome. And therefore, as we look into direct officer sitting on the friend, we may consider this to be a form of promotion, a form of promotion, a form of increasing reputation, a form of recognition that increases the status. Right now, therefore, this would be how we can see that the direct officer sitting on the friends. And for females, direct officer represents their husband, and therefore direct officer coming in, as you can see with the pillar, then there will be also the case where direct officer will be protruded. Therefore, this would be meaning to say that it's protruded because direct officer sitting on means direct officer is on the stand. Therefore, it will be auspicious for the women. Therefore, this would be the case of direct officer sitting on the friend star. Let's look into the next one. We have direct officer sitting on direct officer. Therefore, this would be a pure pillar. So this would be a pure pillar. Can anybody give a few examples of pure pillars? Anyone can think of what are the pure pillars that we have that can result in direct officer sitting on direct officer? Sinew. Very good, very good. Ibao. Therefore, metal. You can't find water. Water and fire don't have. Very hard to find fire and water, isn't it? Therefore, pure pillars. And of course, you can think of earth. Shi. Therefore, that's it. And Jiwei. Therefore, we have Jiwei. Therefore, these are pure pillars. As they are pure pillars, the energy vibration is peak. They are very peak. They are very peak. And you can also find that they are for the metal and for the metal and for your wood. Pure pillars are blossom, peach blossom. So that is why direct officer sitting on direct officer is no good for women. It's a peach blossom. It's a peach blossom, especially for metal and for wood. But for male, it is auspicious. For males, direct officer sitting on direct officer is a pure pillar. Therefore, it represents stronger. It resonates. The energy will be higher and stronger, and therefore, a pure officer pillar would be one that is read to be favorable, to be good. So therefore, it's a good fortune bring wealth. But for the women, direct officer sitting on direct officer is akin to husband sitting on husband. Therefore, that represents a change. That represents a remarriage. So therefore, you can see that in the event of these pure pillars coming in. But again, nowadays, one has to be very careful. We do not read this immediately and automatically for all. Depends if the female day master is strong, if the female day master is rooted, therefore it may not necessarily be that case. If the resource is high, if the wealth is good, this may be a weakening effect. Therefore, we may find that not necessarily it will always be in the part. But generally, direct officer sitting on direct officer would then mean in short, very fast, very good for males and not the opposite for females. Now we move along to the next one, direct officer sitting on 7 kilo. Now direct officer sitting on 7 kilo. Now this is where you'll find the water and the earth, which is your renzi. So therefore you got the ren water sitting on koi water. That's how you can get direct officer sitting on 7K. And what would be the fire one? The fire one would be your fire horse. Huh? Therefore, your sorry, not your wood. Beg your pardon. Pink wood. Beg your pardon. And so this will be your horse, huh? Where therefore these two represents direct officers sitting on 7 kilo. And from the very beginning on our elements, it was mentioned, I think, a few times to try to enforce here that direct officer and 7 killing come hand in hand is confusion, where we do not want to see both. So of all the 5 elements, officer is the only one that we only want to see one type. We don't want to see 2 types. Don't want. No, there's no good. Officer is the only one that we want to see only one type. Only one type. This will be. Officer is the one that we only want to see one. Only one. It's either one or the other. It is not preferable to see both. Which one do we don't mind seeing both? Which one is good for both? Well, usually wealth is good for both. This means multiple sources of income, good career, and good investment. Why not? So both is good, and resource both is also good. Direct information and also underground information, that will be great as well. Therefore, these two will be both. It's fine. It's fine. That we want to have. All right. So here we see that when you have your direct officer sitting on 7 killing, this will represent an arriving pillar that is highly inauspicious. That will be not going to be very good for it. As it's. Well, speaking of which, of course, earlier on, remember, I talked about the pure pillar. When is Yimao coming? When will this Yimao be coming? If not, basically, it will be 2025, isn't it? 2025. So that will be 2025. And so if therefore if you have if you basically if you are male and you have direct officer in your you're able to see this if you are what Yimao. If Yimao is your direct officer, basically who are you? Then you are Wu Earth. You are the Wu Earth Day Master. So for Wu Earth Day Master, male Wu Earth Day Master, good promotion coming up in year 2025. And of course, marital issues for the Wu Earth lady in 2025, as it is. All right, so here we find that direct officer sitting on 7 killing is going to be bad. Bad because of the combination between the authority that will result in indecisiveness, losses and setback, not able to make decision. Therefore, we have here the 7K direct officer confusion. So this will be this kind of confusion normally means you cannot trust your instinct. You cannot. That's the thing. That means you find that your analysis would not be very capable, and so it's something along the line that you get lost in the jungle, and if you think intuitively that you should turn left, that's going to be the wrong decision. You should turn right. So that would be the kind of a confusion that tends to paralyze the decision of this kind of day master. Okay, so now let's move on to direct officer sitting on direct resource. And now this is going to be a good one, because again we have your pressures, the 3 pressures. And so direct officer sitting on direct resource will be one that is your pressures, the one to find that comes in to the point as well. All right, so this combination good. We can find significant. In why? Why? Well, that's because it's harmonious. Because direct officer produces direct resource, and therefore when you sit on a pillar that heaven produces earth, or earth produces heaven, tends to be a very good pillar for you. And so this pillar brings the promotion that comes with money, a promotion that comes with comfort. That means back in the ancient days, this would be where your promotion comes with a household of servants. That would be just how we can also see that to be the case for direct officers sitting on direct resource. Not so common though, we can find this, but that would be just as it is. Okay, we take a look into direct officers sitting on direct resource, which is a good pillar. Can we see here we have one particular celebrity, a Taiwanese Chinese celebrity. And let's take a look into her chart. Number one, she is a Sin metal day master, born in autumn. Therefore, she's a strong day master. Is she rooted? Yep, she is rooted. Therefore, born in the right season, born in the peak of autumn, under a peach blossom of the rooster. And so therefore, we're dealing with a very, very strong day master. And since we are on the pillar of direct officer sitting on direct resource, can you see whether there is such pillar here? Therefore, this is a direct officer sitting on direct resource. So this is a pink chart, fire dragon. And therefore, direct resource sitting on direct officer sitting on direct resource is her very first pillar, the year pillar. And therefore, that pillar is auspicious, highly auspicious for this day master. And for a strong day master, a direct officer is a favorable element. And for a Sin day master combines with pink fire to produce water. So it's a harmonious combination. Pink wants to combine with Sin. Sin metal needs pink fire. Therefore, this is a useful god. It is favorable. And the pillar will be very good. So therefore, that would be one. And moreover, direct officer is her husband star. Protruded to the top also would be good for a female. Now, is there anything else that we want to identify? Here, the dragon combines with the phoenix. So, dragon combines with the phoenix. Therefore, these two combined together produces metal. And so, when the dragon combines with the phoenix, it produces metal. And metal represents the day master, strengthening the day master. So therefore, this day master is actually, in a way, excessively too strong already. So therefore, we are dealing with quite an excessively strong day master because you got a combination that produces more metal. All right, all these are some of the positive readings that we can get for this celebrity lady here, this pretty Sin metal lady. Now, is there anything else that you want to observe that will now be something that is not tremendously favorable? Anyone can think of anything that usually you can observe. Peach blossom stars. How many peach blossom stars does this lady have? How many? 3. Very good, lady. The thing about peach blossom star, how many do you want to see? How many do you need or do you welcome? Yes, that's right. Big quick, fantastic. There is also an correct. So when it comes to peach blossom, You just want one, huh? You just want one. You do not want the royal flush, huh? You don't want to see. And this lady here will have the rooster. She will have the rooster, she will have the rabbit, she will have the rat. And therefore the rat and the rabbit will have an uncivilized punishment. And I get 3%. So we are going to look into something that this lady will experience for almost the rest of her life. And now our emphasis will also be on the direct officer with the 7 killing, where the direct officer represents the husband, and of course, 7 killing represents the so-called the boyfriend, yeah. And you have a 7 killing sitting on a peach blossom. So the boyfriend sits on peach blossom star, while the husband sits on a graveyard star, and the husband is further away from the day master in terms of distance, therefore would indicate that her marriage, the reading of the marriage would not be entirely super favorable. Would not be into one, as it is. Therefore, that's the one part we can consider. So here, as we look into this lady, she had a marriage. So she was married in November 2010. She was married in the year 2010, which actually was into the part of the Keng. 2010, she was married here in basically the 7K horse into one part. Therefore, that was her first marriage. And subsequently, they were divorced, and a divorce in terms of infidelity, and of course politics. I'm not too sure too much about that. I doubt politics will be from her point, but I wouldn't want to say too much. Also not very clear about whose infidelity would it be. And this chart wouldn't be too surprising if the day master of this chart may contribute to some of it. That's because here this lady would be very attractive, and her attractiveness would create the peach blossom clash. The peach blossom clash. Therefore, there will be complicated love affairs and relationships that can plague this lady, whether she likes it or not. All right, to a certain degree also, as we consider, then of course there will be a divorce, where in the year 2021, into the following year, 2021, in the year of in the case for the fire, this will be also the one part where fire represents. What does fire represent? What does fire represents to this sin metal day master? So fire represents officer, officer. Right. So this lady has officer problem. She would have major officer problems. She would that would be how we can see how this chart can be an issue for her. All right. So anyway, the reading would go that when we look into the direct officer, if the direct officer is far from the day master, and so here the one part, if it's far, if the direct officer is far, so direct officer is far, indicating that from the natal chart, the direct officer is far. Where is far? Here is far. The worst far is, of course, if it is actually hidden in the graveyard. That is very, very far, especially in a year step. That is very, very far, very, very slow. Therefore, she would be very slow to get married. Very slow. Therefore, there will be the reading into how we can see the chart. All right, as we move along, then we can also find that Her branch sits on indirect wealth. And there's also a mention that there is a 7K direct officer confusion. So we identify that there is a 7K direct officer confusion. And of course, for ladies, for female day master, this may represent love triangle. And so the 7K direct officer confusion may be a confusion about who to marry. If you have two, who do you marry? And therefore, that is why the 7K direct officer confusion may also represent a clash. And here we also see that there is a clash. Now, we would know, or we know, that rooster and rabbit as a clash. There is also a clash between the rooster, the rabbit is also a clash. And therefore here we find that the 7K sitting on the pillar has a clash against the spouse pillar. And therefore this also represents that there will be quite a good number of issues. So what would be her problem? Too attractive, many pursuer, and therefore she will find herself vulnerable and weak to men, and therefore with that resulted in a very tumultuous relationship. And so with that in mind, this chart would have quite a long history of emotional roller coaster. So here we look into it. We have, first of all, we have 7K and direct officer. That's one emotional roller coaster. Now we have 3 peach blossom. Actually, a 3 peach blossom itself is already enough for you to have an emotional roller coaster. But here, on top of that, you got 7K and direct officer, and on top of that, you also have your officer luck pillar. The officer luck pillar coming. Therefore, in this case, we can find that the officer would be overwhelmingly very strong and catered for. Right. So that would be something that plagues her life, and she would need to be able to understand how she can play the card very well. And if not careful, her actions will harm or will have an uncivilized punishment with the children. So the children will have an upbringing that will feel punished by her relationship as well. All right, now so that's where we look into the part. But here, as we are looking into her career point of view, or in the standing of her social, because the year pillar represents her fasa, and that is going to be fantastic. So if we also forget everything else that we discussed earlier, just come back to our original idea. Direct officer sitting on direct resource. So direct officer sitting on direct resource is one precious sitting on another precious, and you put it into the year pillar as a fasa. This lady will have a very good social life. The year pillar is social. The year pillar is a very good early youth, the part of a youth of. Alright, so therefore you go, this will be just how we can look into the chart and then map out the relationships. Right, move along. As we move along now, let's take a look into direct officer sitting on indirect resource. Now, in a way, direct officer sitting on indirect resource is overall not so fantastic. But again, the one key reasons why it is overall negative is because in the ancient text, indirect resource is not perceived to be a favorable element. But one has to be careful because nowadays things are perceived to be a bit different. Yeah. So I would say that there is a tendency to find success in academic because again, resource here is about education. Resource here is about innovative thinking out of the box, and one can also consider this to be fair. The one reason as to why this may be perceived to be negative as well is because indirect resource weakens. It's a weakening effect. So even though direct officer produces, but when you produce an indirect resource, the weakening can be quite strong. Yeah. So as a result, this may be one that may have a little bit more of negative. But but I would say that overall, in my opinion or in my observation, direct officer sitting on that indirect resource is actually quite good. It actually normally means you have promotions, but more for academic, more for opportunities to do research. So meaning to say that you have maybe here, to cut the story short, you can say that this is about what we call unconventional promotion. So if this is a luck pillar, you may say that this is a form of a direct officer. It's a promotion luck, but it is one that is unconventional, something that requires a lot more work to come. All right, now next we have direct officer sitting on direct wealth. Very good. Therefore, again, this is one precious sitting on another precious. So direct officer sitting on direct wealth, and direct wealth produces direct officer. And therefore, money and reputations and promotions and career success comes to it. Therefore, this would be an exceptionally favorable, which is quite simple. You have money and you have officer coming in here. For both male and female. Because for the male, direct wealth is the wife. For the female, direct officer is the husband. So one way or the other, this will be equally favorable for both. Now, when it comes to direct officer sitting on indirect wealth, I think earlier we talked about direct officer meeting indirect wealth. That is a bit different. Here, direct officer sitting on indirect wealth is actually favorable and prosperous. And so again, money luck, career, investment, recognition that comes into also in terms of success and wealth generation. So bottom line, direct officer and wealth are quite something favorable to look at. Okay, so direct officer sitting on direct officer. I think we discussed this earlier on. I think it must be a repeat. I thought I've explained that already. I'm sorry. It's a pure pillar. Therefore, I think this is a repeat. So it's good for the male and bad for the female. Yeah, that we have done that. And now here comes one of the possibly the worst you can face. This is a part where you have your direct officer meeting hurting officer. Calamity. Therefore, the hurting officer has a very, very direct same element clash with the direct officer. Therefore, represents possibly a conflict with the authorities and legal issues. So if not careful, it may represent lawsuits, criminal charges, and of course for the female, it represents a marital conflict, all the same as well. Because their roots are the same, therefore this would be merciless. So of all but this is ranked the worst you can have for direct officer sitting on hurting officer. So this would be quite the two of them. So because direct officer is gentle, hurting officer is rebellious. Therefore, one is an introvert, one is an extrovert. Therefore, this is a clash of two opposite minds. Direct officer sitting on eating God. Because eating God and direct officer will form part of the combination. So therefore, very good. So direct officer welcomes eating God. You have to be controlled by the eating God. Eating God is intelligent, creative. And so direct officer sitting on eating God is nobility, sitting on creative and brilliant academics. And therefore here, this would be abundant, would be abundantly one that is prosperous. In a way, for female, direct officer is husband, eating God is the children. Therefore, that is why it represents a happy family. It represents happy family because you have the husband, you have the children. So husband and children, happy family. Therefore, it represents possibility as well. And so here, let's take a look into this dictator. Of course, historians and people may not remember him as fondly as he might want to. But anyway, for us to look into the reading, what we want to see is that this person has a direct officer sitting on eating God. So direct officer sitting on eating God is a very auspicious pillar. And having a very auspicious pillar as your career pillar is one that will propel you to do great things in life. So direct officer sitting on eating God. And therefore here we find that this person by the name of Pinochet, Augustus, was a Chilean dictator. Now in a way, you wouldn't like him. His accomplishment involved being a dictator that also resulted in the killing of more than 3,000 people. Yeah. But then, of course, as you look into Pachi, luck is luck. Good luck. That means gangsters and dictators can also experience good luck. So who are you to say that they can't? Into the one part, as it is. Alright, but here let's take a look. So his month pillar is one that is direct officer sitting on eating God. Therefore, this pillar is one to gain power, which he is. However, this is a Keng Day Master. It's a Keng Metal Day Master. Metal needs fire to be forged. Therefore, if you are a Metal Day Master, especially Keng Metal needs fire. Keng Metal needs fire. So Keng Metal needs direct officer. Keng Metal needs that control, and once the fire element comes in, then they'll be very favorable. And so here we find that this Keng Day Master, born in winter, in the month of the pig, fire will be weak, metal will be weak. And therefore, this is a case whereby we have a weak day master and a weak direct officer. And therefore, this person may have a tough beginning until the person is baptized with fire. So the baptism of fire, and when will that fire comes in? And therefore, here as you can find that the luck pillar contains of fire luck pillar, which is going to be favorable for this person. And therefore, this person will achieve substantial great things in life. Unfortunately, the great things in life may not benefit most of humanity, but still, nonetheless, that will be his fortune. Yeah. Direct officer sitting on Rockwell. Bad. Bad. I think we discussed earlier. That is a clash. So direct officer sitting on Rockwell will be a clash. There will be a disharmony amongst siblings. Therefore, there will be a lot of against your family members, and direct officer sitting on good blade may point towards being a tendency of using power for violence. Because Rockwell is also known as good blade. Good blade is also violent. And therefore, that's where it's also a very martial particular type as it is. And so for here, we look into the former leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il. whereby his career pillar, of course, is one of direct officer sitting on Rockwell. Direct officer sitting on. But for this pillar here, we can see that there is a harm formation, that a snake will harm the tiger, and also 7K direct officer confusion. Therefore, here this also indicate that overall the pillars are not very favorable. And therefore here there is going to be some conflict or clash between the social facade and also the career that we can have as well. Therefore, all in all, we can find that this will be quite an inauspicious, adverse pillar that we can also consider. All right, so there goes. So this will be the end of part 2 as we explore all the various direct officers sitting on to the 10 elements. That wraps up on our part 2 of this part. All right, people. So if there's any other questions, Fernando, you can hear me, right? I hope there's no other further audio. Let me know if there's any issues that you have encountered. Right? Okay, thank you everyone. Good night. Good night. There are no other further questions. Yeah. Thank you.